Hey everyone, welcome back to Class 4 of our Masterclass Explainer. Today, we're getting into something absolutely crucial. We're tackling the true backbone of fashion design, basic pattern making. This is the actual technical magic, the engineering, if you will, that takes a flat 2D sketch and completely transforms it into a living, breathing, wearable 3D garment. It's gonna be awesome.
Okay, let's dive into this roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the skeleton of fashion, the pattern itself. Then, it's drafting versus draping. After that, we'll cover essential tools and measurements, followed by the magic of fitting with darts. And finally, we'll wrap up with the basic block and your homework.
All right, Section 1, the skeleton of fashion, pattern. So think about this for a second. A totally breathtaking fashion sketch, it's honestly practically useless on its own if you don't know how to physically build it. There's this really powerful metaphor I love. If the silhouette is the soul of design, the pattern is its skeleton. Makes sense, right? Without a skeleton, a body just collapses. Same thing here. Without a solid pattern, that beautiful sketch is never going to become a wearable piece of clothing.
And this brilliantly illustrates why major fashion houses don't just rely on their designers. No, they rely heavily on what we call a pattern master. These are highly respected experts who create the precise paper or cardboard templates that are used to cut fabric accurately. It's an incredibly technical role. In fact, quite often, these pattern masters actually carry way more practical experience than the headline designers themselves.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2, drafting versus draping.
So there are basically two distinct philosophies or methods for bringing that skeletal structure to life. On one side, you have drafting, which is flat pattern making. This is kind of the mathematician's approach. You use precise body measurements, math, rulers, and flat paper. It's absolutely the standard for creating repeatable, ready-to-wear garments. But then on the other side is draping. This is much more of a sculptor's approach. You're taking cheap muslin fabric and pinning it directly onto a 3D dress form. It's super intuitive and creative, mostly used by legendary designers for those flowy, asymmetric, haute couture masterpieces. But if you're just starting out, for sure, always start with drafting. It gives you a much deeper understanding of human body proportions.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this all builds together. Essential tools and measurements.
Time to build your toolkit. You're going to need the basics, a flexible measuring tape and pattern paper. Dot or graph works great. Then comes the precision hardware. You'll need a French curve ruler for getting those perfect armholes, a hip curve ruler for sweeping side seams, and an L-square or T-square to guarantee straight 90-degree fabric grain lines. Finally, add your utility items. You'll want an awl for marking, a tracing wheel with carbon paper, a notcher for joining edges, and pattern weights so you can keep everything flat without messing around with pins.
So, with your tools in hand, you need actual numbers. Here are the core body measurements you absolutely need. Bust or chest, waist, hip, shoulder width, shoulder to waist, sleeve length, armhole, inseam for pants, and the neck measurement. Oh, and here's a quick bit of fashion trivia for you. The hip measurement? It's usually taken exactly 18 to 20 centimeters below the waistline. Pretty neat, right? Now, here is a professional tip, and this is absolutely crucial. You must capture what we call the true measurement. This means you wrap the flexible tape so it just touches the skin. No pressing, no squeezing. Never pull the tape tight, assuming you're adjusting for fit. Getting this baseline true measurement is step 1. It's your ground zero before we add any extra room.
Which brings us to Section 4, the magic of fitting, darts.
Okay, slow down for a second and think about this geometric puzzle. How exactly do we wrap perfectly flat fabric around a round, moving human body? Well, before we even shape it, we have to make sure we can actually wear it, right? That is where ease comes in. Ease is simply adding extra space to your true body measurement in the pattern so the garment is actually comfortable to move in. It's the #1 concept beginners forget. And honestly, sewing a garment with zero ease means it's going to stick to your body like glue. It would be completely unwearable.
Now, what's really interesting here is the distinct split between wearing ease and design ease. Wearing ease is purely functional. It's the minimal 5 to 7.5 centimeters added just so you can breathe, sit, and move around. But design ease, that's extra space a designer adds purely for style. Think of a trendy, oversized look. Calculating that specific design ease is really where the pattern maker steps out of the technical zone and actually becomes a designer.
Once ease is factored in, we hit the real climax of this lesson, darts. Darts are these triangular, folded sections that are sewn directly into flat fabric. They literally bridge the gap to mold flat cloth onto 3D body curves. This right here is the true aha moment of pattern making. It's where the magic truly happens to give shape to the chest and the waist.
The most common darts you'll see on a bodice are the bust dart to accommodate the chest and the waist dart to cinch in the midsection. You might also encounter the shoulder dart, though that's mostly found in vintage designs nowadays. And here's a really fascinating note. Darts don't always look like triangles. Sometimes clever pattern makers will secretly hide them by converting them into pleats or gathers.
All right, last but not least, Section 5, Basic Block and Homework.
Let me introduce you to the basic bodice block, often called a sloper. This thing is basically the holy grail for fashion students. It's a pure body-fit foundational pattern for the upper body. Zero design details, no extra style fabric. Every single fashion school student creates a personal sloper because it serves as the absolute baseline foundation for their entire career. So why is this sloper so highly revered? 2 words, pattern manipulation, specifically the slash and spread technique. Once you have a perfect fitting block, you can actually modify it by cutting lines into the paper and spreading it apart to create literally endless new designs, all while guaranteeing the original fit stays intact. Think back to our first class. If you add a seam and spread the fabric out at the waist of your basic block, boom, you instantly create an A-line silhouette.
But wait, before you go cutting into any expensive fabric, we have to talk about seam allowance. This is the 1 to 1.5 centimeters of extra space left at the absolute edges of a pattern strictly for stitching. So the crucial point is, do not forget this. If you forget this small detail, your final garment will end up entirely too small because the sewing machine eats up that fabric.
Okay, to truly grasp all of this, you need to see it in the real world. So here is a practical homework assignment to connect today's theory with the clothes sitting in your closet right now. Step 1. Grab your measuring tape and take your core measurements: bust, waist, hip, shoulder width, and sleeve length. Just remember, get that true measurement. Step 2. Go into your closet, grab an old fitted shirt, and turn it inside out. I want you to actively look for those hidden darts and locate the seam allowances along the edges. I promise, examining the clothes you already own is going to completely change how you see fashion construction. Which brings me to a final provocative thought for you to chew on. If your personal sloper was fully drafted and perfectly fitted right this very second, what is the first design you would create? Let that question inspire your creativity. And hey, let me know, for our next explainer, should we cover step-by-step block drafting or should we dive straight into the psychology of color palettes? Until next time, stay curious, keep creating, and I'll catch you in the next one.